Hey, hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, MtoA 522, I'll be talking about a new material series on how to create like a painted rock or chipped off paint using procedurals only. This tutorial is actually a shading assignment from my Udemy course about Arnold Learn Fundamentals, and I just thought I will be doing the tutorial here on YouTube for you guys to follow along and also for my students on Udemy. So if you don't know the course what I'm talking about, you can go on Udemy and just search for Arnold. If you're lucky enough, the first one which will pop up is mine, Learn Arnold Fundamentals. So in here, under course section, course content at the bottom, there's a first shading assignment. And if I go back to assignments, instructions, this is kind of what the instruction about this course is. So go to this website, download a HDR kit from Dusan Kovic, which is about different HDRs, like a little look dev scene. I have it open here as well, so this is kind of what it looks like. And if you want to follow along in this material series, go to this website, download the material kit or look dev kit. There's install instructions, everything right here. And then I will also make this scene available on my Patreon page. So if you are a patron of mine there, you can actually go there, download the scene and get the full shading network and all the fancy setups I did there already. So these are the kind of things to be aware of. So I will head over to Maya right now and let's jump right into this. So before we jump in, actually, a lot of people requested that I show you how my layout is or how I set it up. So this is actually the initial Maya layout, and also what you might notice is it's super large today. I also got lots of feedback that my font is too small and it's hard to see on the resolution of 2K whatever. So I went into Maya preferences and actually changed the UI scaling. You can do that in preferences and actually scale the interface up. So it's actually a 50% or 150% upscale. So everything should be a bit larger. So let's first do the customization. So what I tend to do from Maya Classic, I switch to Rendering Expert, which is a very stripped down view. And you can already see it's a lot cleaner and nicer. So I think if I maybe reset this, yeah, okay, so this is the typical expert rendering mode. And what I tend to do here is actually I like to keep the view panes open. And what I just then do is I open Arnold, open render view, I drag this into here, and then I close the property bin at the bottom. I clean up, close the render setup there. So now I just have the Arnold render view here. What I then do is if I find the script editor, it's not here, and I right click, close the tabs, close UV editor, relationship, and then I right click here and choose my tab direction to be on the right, so it's snapping to my right of the screen. I will be closing the light editor and also the script editor. I will drag it to my render view so they are next to each other. And what else? My outliner, I like to have it on the right, so I'm dragging this guy over like so. Then I can close this guy. And in my view pane, see what I like to do is I actually like to have the node editor here and close the Maya render view. And also I like to have my hypershade next to the node editor too. So I have the node editor, the hypershade, Arnold render view, script editor, and also obviously I would like to have another viewport. So I go to window, I think it's in here. Is it here? New viewport. Can I, oh, did I do that actually? So I can actually go here, panels, tear off a copy and just drag this one up here. So just that I have a viewport on the left as well. This is just mostly for my camera or something like that. So render view here and then hypershade there. So this is kind of how I set it up. And this is how I have been working all along. It's nothing crazy. If you want to hide the heads up display, heads up display, you can tear it off and you just hide the stuff you don't want. So we have object details and we have poly count, and we want also to hide the bifront stuff. So this is kind of what I like to work with. So this is that. And so let's just go file, save, as, or let's just first set up a project. So we're actually starting from scratch here. So I will be just going to my work folder training, and then at the bottom here I will go into my old painted rock, and I will just go to Maya and I will say set project, create default workspace, and I'll just hit save, and we should be in the correct folder. Oh, we actually don't have scenes, so let's just put in a scenes folder, scenes like so, and we just save MtoA 522 training.ma. And yeah, so we are ready to go. So now let's go with the setup. So with the install instructions of the LookDev kit, there you will get a command like this for Mel. You paste it into the script editor under the Mel tab, hit Control A, Control Enter, and then it will actually import all the stuff you need. And if I go to my, if I hide this for now and I look through my camera, this is what I get on default. And obviously I also have default render settings, which I don't like docked actually. So if I make them a bit smaller, you can see that I've got render settings set up already. It should be fine for this case. So if I want to follow the assignment instructions, I first will create a sphere. I will scale it up to have a radius of 50, which is in terms 1 meter in the diameter. So, and then I will be rotating this guy like so. I will move it up. Oh, actually, do I? Yeah. Maybe like this, and I'll just hide the floor which comes in with the LookDev kit. I can zoom in a tiny bit, and this is kind of what I get. Then I can move my LookDev control center. I can scale it up in the channel box, something I guess move the sphere down a bit, just that we have more room for the reference spheres. There we go. That's the name of that stuff. All right, so here we are, and this is kind of the initial setup, and I think most of you should be able to get this far. It's super straightforward. So I'm just hitting save. I will be changing the subdivisions to maybe 100. And also you can see now that actually my UVs are being stretched because it's a sphere. So if I check my UV editor, let's see what I actually like to do instead of, oh well, that doesn't matter. It just, they will be stretched along the sides a bit, but it doesn't really matter because it's just about how to set up the procedurals in general and not about having not stretchy UVs. All right, so the geometry is square now. So I hit Alt-Shift-D to clear my history, hit Control-S to save, right-click, assign new material, go to Arnold and assign a standard surface shader. So this is what we have. Basic standard surface shader. We have a light coming from here, and according to the assignment, we should be working with HDR, I think number 6, correct? So in the LookDev kit and the channel box, you can just change the HDR version to 6. Hit save again, and let's just open up the Arnold render view, change my renders test resolution to maybe 50%, hit the update or run IPR, and change the mode or the camera to be actually LookDev camera. So on default, this is what we get. It's super wide, which is okay, no problem. But I want to first check my render settings just to make sure everything is set up correct. So for this kind of scene, what I like to do is have my AA samples to maybe 4. 1 is fine. We don't need any ray depth of 2 because there's no really not much bounce going on. So 1 is totally fine. We actually don't even really need indirect because we don't have a bouncy floor, but just leave it at that. What I like to do, no texture, auto creation. We can use existing TX files, but even that is not always ideal, but that's currently my setup. I don't like bucket scanning random, so I change it to spiral. It's coming from the center. And I think 64 is just fine for my bucket size. It's actually the most efficient one to do. And yeah, I don't care about the rest. So let's just save again and save prefs in case we get a crash. So now let's check, move over to the hypershade and do a few more things to set everything up. So I don't want, well, I will keep the material viewer here just to be able to block off the hypershade. Or let's just close it, doesn't matter. Okay, so this is my shader. I will be renaming this to AI, I don't know, chip paint or whatever. You can call it what you want. You can rename the shading engine. In my light shader little thingy helper, I have a rename all for shading engine so they get the shader name. Right, so that's the setup. And now what I want to do is I want to load in the reference. So how I'm doing that is I have a tool called PureRef. I open this up. It's pretty empty on default. So what you can do, you can actually just drag and drop. So images in here. So if I go to my source images, I have my pillar reference. I just drag it in and I get it right there. And on default, this is on top, which is very handy. So what I can do, I can just position this guy right into my window and maybe move the script edit or the attribute editor a bit more to the side so I have more room to scale this. And this is kind of now my setup. So I can double click. This is what I have for my reference. And if nothing changes, this will be my setup from now on. So after 10, 11, or actually 12 minutes of talking, we can finally start with this tutorial. So let's just check my render again. So this was my result from my first initial test. So I cannot guarantee that this will look now exactly the same, but we will definitely get close to this. So I will use the same techniques I used in my time-lapse video, but I will talk over it and show you actually what my thinking process was for everything. So heading back over here and making sure my reference is available. Let's get going. So the first thing is you notice that there are repeating colors. So we have yellow, we have black, red, and yellow. So what I was thinking is it was a striped pillar or whatever concrete thing it was, and it's like a pattern. So my first thing was, let's just create a ramp and kind of eyeball these colors. So that was my first thought. So let's just do a ramp texture. Hook this guy up to ID 01. And also, if you don't have those ID slots, what you can do, you can right click the node, show all attributes, or edit the custom list to make them visible. And obviously be sure to be on the latest MtoA to get all the stuff I am using right here. So the ID slots are used for output AOVs, so it's actually, they don't contribute to the current render. Just keep that in mind. So if let's just update the scale a tiny bit like that. Okay, so default setup for the standard surface is a white shader with a weight of 0.8, which I find a bit odd, but doesn't matter. So typically what you want to do is change the HSV to always 18% gray and weight to 1. And then make sure either you don't have any specular or you have a really high roughness of maybe 0.7. This would be a typical gray shader ball. Also, I just changed diffuse roughness to 1, and what it means, it's not a Lambertian model. It's more like Orinair. It's more like for dusty and rough surfaces. And you can see my sun is facing us directly, which in this case don't really like. So I will be just selecting the dome light, and I'll head over to my transform node. It's currently linked to my frame position. So what you can do, you can either skip frames to go to a nice view, or you can just break this connection and enter it manually. So I just skip frames to 150 or 165. Let's just try 165. I think this is, sorry, it's too much shadow side on here. So I'd like to have some balanced, so maybe this is nice. It's not half, but it's a bit more than that. And this is kind of what I will be going with from now on. So realigning this guy and scaling this up again. Hopefully we are now in a good state. Okay, so this is my initial setup, and if I would like to view the ramp now, what I'll do, I'll just hit isolate mode, click the ramp, and this is what we get. So let's just change the mode to be none and then move this over. What you can see now, I get actually a hard line. So you can see the orientation is wrong, so change it to a U ramp, update things to get something going, and you can see now at the top we have dark or black. So the next step is to create a few colors. You can actually pick them. So I click here, click my picker and click, I don't know, on this yellow here. And then I'll do the same for the dark color. Click and select the color. Then we click on the next ramp node, and this time we will be on red. And after that, it's just a repeating pattern. So where's the red? Where's the yellow? So there's the yellow, there's the red. So I would like to have it repeating. So you could actually add another color, like yellow again, or you can actually go to the place to denote and actually do a repeating pattern. Let's say we want to, is it UV? We want the U to repeat maybe 3 times. And then you can see you get more colors. So we have yellow on the top. Let's just spread them out evenly. And then what we do, we just go into, we just lock actually. We're on isolate. So in the bottom corner, you have a little lock, which means the selection is locked to this node. And then you can actually change your offset without changing the selection of your currently looked at node. So you can see this is kind of what we get in here. So we have yellow at the top, we have black, red, and then yellow again. I would like to have a bit broader yellow, so more yellow, like so. Obviously this is preference, what you would like to see. And then you would do an offset again until you're happy with your layout. So I'm trying just to eyeball the same thing we get kind of here. And the next thing what you notice is the color paint, or the paint, is kind of connected, and there are some overlaps, really subtle overlaps. And also it's actually diagonal, so not straight as I have it right now. So in the ramp, you can, in the place to denote, you can rotate the UV. You can go all the way to the right, and then you can rotate it as, if you remember, I said the UVs are not nice, so that's what I'm talking about. They stretch towards the poles, but this is all right. It doesn't really matter. If you have proper UVs, this should be a good solution to just rotate the UVs. So my ramp again, I was talking about the noise, so it's super simple to do. The ramp has a noise pattern, so what you can do, you can increase noise and then play around with the frequency. We want smaller frequency, so increase the number here, maybe to 3. You can see now this is very interesting, and this is exactly what we want to do. You can play around with even smaller frequencies to just get a more broken up edge. And this is kind of exactly what this is. So you can see there's some overlaps. This might be even a bit too big still, but this is kind of working, and it's just a way of doing things. You can also do a noise pattern or whatever, but I think this is something which is good to go. And the next step, what I like to do is I want to create the broad noises for these 3 colors. And you can actually see that the black is a different noise scale or frequency than red or yellow. So in terms of creating that, you would have a hard time doing this in one little noise node, because they are global or local, which means you cannot have different scales per color. So what I like to do, I want to duplicate my ramp, and luckily enough it's just 3 colors. So what I can do, I can change my yellow to be, let's say, red, pure red, my black to be pure green, and my red color to be pure blue. So what that enables me to do is actually isolate based on the color. The first step is though to connect the same place to denote. So holding Control, middle mouse drag onto that white dot, connects it over, and you can see we have the exact same connection. So if I hook this up to ID slot 1 and I disable my isolation lock, you can see that now we have kind of the same pattern, but just separated by color ID. So if I hit red, you can see white, green, and blue. So I have this isolation. And that's kind of the idea, to use this as a mask for my noises. So the next step is to create a, what can we do? We can actually do a, let's try a layer RGBA. And this has mixes, and I think this should do the trick. So let's just see if it's actually doing a trick. I connect this guy up to my ID slot, and let's just change my color to be cyan, enable layer 2, magenta, and layer 3 would be yellow. So right now, layer 1 is fully visible. So I think if I connect the red slot to my mix, we see that cyan is grabbing the matte red, and if I select green to mix 2, and if I select blue output to mix 3, we should be getting all these colors split up by these ID slots, right? It makes sense actually, right? So this is now my broken up texture, and in the color itself, what I'll be doing is, instead of plugging in the colors in here or changing them in here, what I want to do is actually just create a AI noise, or a, yeah, AI noise. I think that's the one I used. If I hook this one up here, you can see we get a pattern there. If I duplicate this and connect this to my input 2, get the same obviously. And then I duplicate it one more time and connect this guy up to my slot number 3. So we've got now the same result as if it's just connected, as if just one noise would be connected. The benefit though is it's actually more than one. I can now do some different scales, different colors. Obviously I'm looking through that, so actually I should be locking it to this node. So lock. And now if I change noise 1, you can see that is changing independently. Alrighty, so what we will be doing now is, before we create crazy patterns, I just want to connect a AI range beforehand. And what this enables us is actually to clamp the color to a correct range. So right now, it's a range from 0 to 1 and lots of grayscale values. But for this to work, we need to kind of get a proper hard edge. So what that means, if I change my min max to 0.49 maybe, or 495, and my input to 0.505, we have a 10 unit range, which means we have almost no grayscale values. And this is kind of what we want. So if this is the yellow part, we want to have, I would say, medium-sized patterns, and well, it's actually almost the smallest size of patterns. So in terms of creating sizes, what you can do is just change the scale. So 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 will give us a larger scale. So then you add octaves to this, which adds more detail. And now you can see what's happening. We get actually these nice kind of twirls or whatever. And this is pretty close to what we want to have. We just want to change the amount. So what I'll be doing, I make the scale even larger, maybe 0.1. Yeah, and we change the octaves even higher. Maybe 0.1 is a bit large. So you can see it's a definitely trial and error thing. until you're satisfied with your values. So I think this might actually work pretty good, and you can also scale it. So if you just change one value, you can get more like elongated shapes or something like that. And even so, like, you can still play around with the range. So in terms of making them less like making them less white, what you can do is increase the black input min a bit more, which means you get less pieces, something like this. It's always good to have like a range of maybe plus 10. So if this is 0.565, we want to have 575, and we get this kind of look. All right, so also what you can do if you want to have like a few more chips everywhere, something like that, what you can do, you can get very creative with this kind of approach. So you can do another noise, we can do a AI composite, or you can do a mix, you can do a layer, whatever you want to do. So let's just use a composite for now, and hook this up here and hook this one up there. Actually, we need the same range hooked up here. And then this connects to my composite bottom, composite top. Output of the range goes in my composite. And now in here, you would do maybe max, for instance. What this means, it will always take the highest value. This one is currently 0. So if I change my frequency to be maybe 0.6, you can now see you get these tiny things everywhere, like these blotches. And sometimes they are connected, sometimes they are not. And you can also change the kind of the amount of, how you say it, like the amount of the particles or whatever. So if you do maybe 0.6 and 0.59, 0.59, you can see we're clearing out a few more things, and we can go even further. Let's go maybe 0.7 and 6.9, and now you get really smaller blotches. And depending if you're happy with this, you can go with that. If not, you can also I don't know, stick with this or not. Also, you should have smooth step on, or what you can do in the end, you can do just an AI clamp, so just to be sure your max does not go over a value of 1. So let's hook this up. And now I'm ensuring that my values don't go above 1. All right, and you can see it gets a bit softer. So what I actually tend to do is I enable smooth step here, which is also a kind of a clamp. And then maybe a range of 10 units is not enough, so maybe 9.5. And in this one as well, 7. Which just gives us a little bit more sharper edges. So this would be my yellow, and I think it's a bit too much yellow. So whatever is white would be yellow, right? So I think this is too much. So let's just increase this a bit more, maybe 7 and 6.9. So that's a lot less, and I think this works better. And then we do the smaller ones. We can also get rid of even more. So if you go on 8.5 and 8.4, we only have these little dots. And you can go further. You can now do a multiply on top or a min value just to even make a really large one. Well, okay, I'll just do this here as the main example, and the rest is not that detailed. So if I do now another AI noise, and then I do a composite again, composite, and I connect the output of the first one to here, and then this one to this, and then oops, I can't connect them, and then out color goes to input of my clamp. And this time, instead of using a max, we will use a min. We will connect a range, like so, and we will do maybe, let's just do 0.51 and 0.5, and we change the scale to be maybe 0.05, 0.05, 0.05. So now what you can see, we are actually cutting out stuff. So if I increase this, you can see wherever it's really dark, you can see it's cutting out stuff. And this is kind of a way to break out, like add more detail and get larger patches. So it looks kind of painted. It's not spread out everywhere. You get like dots here and more there. So wherever the noise is black, you have the white showing through. That's kind of what it is. So I'm pretty happy with the result right now. So this would be my setup for the yellow. And as I said before, I will not spend that much time for the other ones because it's kind of the same pattern. It's just depends how much time you spend with this, right? So my range is connected to my next color. And let's just go maybe for values of 0.6 and 0.61. Change my noise to, let's say we have 0.4. No, we need to go maybe 0.05 like we did before in the breakout, and increase my octaves to maybe 6. Yeah, this should work. Maybe 7, maybe 7. And then we can also play around with distortion to get a bit more kind of, it looks like it's more organic, definitely. And now you can see that we have these bigger connected shapes. You can offset this however you want, like move it to the right or to the left or whatever, depending what you want to aim for. And then the next one is the red, which is a bit more, I would say more detailed, a bit smaller pieces, and it's kind of more spread out. So let's just do that quickly with maybe 0.7 and 0.71 and change my scale to be 0.3. And octaves to 6. So this would be red, and I think we can go a bit smaller in this axis, and in this one we can do some offsetting. I don't know. So this would be my 3 patterns for my masks, right? All right, so that's my kind of my breakout or breakup mat. So what I like to do now, I just hit 1 to make smaller nodes, and I do a sorting, which is this guy. So now it's nice and sorted. I can hit 4 again, and this AI layer RGBA would be my mask or paint mask, like so. And I will use this also for a color, for my base color. So what that means is I will create a, let's just create an AI layer RGBA, which will be my concrete shader. So let's just call this concrete, not shader, but flat color. And then we'll do we can do a composite, we can do also a mix shader, which supports colors or like single textures or shaders. So deleting this, and let's just connect up this ramp 1 and out color here to my shaders 1 and 2, and my red output, which is just any grayscale value, goes to the mix. And this one connects to my base color. So if I hit save now, remove the isolate selection, you can see now this is kind of what I get, and obviously it is inverted. So I will be just switching out the shaders. So Alt Shift left click and drag is this cut tool. So my color goes to shader 2. And my color goes into shader 1, and I'll just change my first color to be white, and this would be my color. So you can see now I feel that the black is too small. So what you would do now is you would go to this guy here, and I think it's this one. So we can just go 0.1 maybe, and you can see now everything changes with the scale of this. Maybe that's too much, maybe 2.5. Yeah, and then maybe play around. Let's just leave it as this, or maybe just go. You can see you can always play around. But anyways, I like it like that, and we just leave it as it is. Save. Okay. So this is kind of the initial setup of how to break out 3 different noise patterns. So the next step would be to apply this for displacement, right? So currently we have a black and white mat to drive the chipped paint. So if I do a displacement shader, and this is where you should save more often. This playing with displacement and interactive is a bit dodgy. So I select the mask, the output of this goes to my displacement, and the displacement connects to my original shading engine and then to the displacement shader. This is what we get. It's already doing the right thing. The problem is, though, my wireframe is not detailed enough. So what I like to do is I select the shape through the render view, go to my sphere shape in the Arnold tab, make sure I have subdivision to Cat Clark, and then make sure you have iterations. Maybe be gentle, just go 1 up at a time, not 21. That's not a good idea. So just 2, hit enter, and you can see my wireframe gets smaller and smaller. If I hit 3, we get even smaller subdivisions, and you can see now we get these little islands of displacement happening. So it looks like these numbers here are super high compared to these numbers. So if I just for now go to my shader and disable the scale, I just want to double check if I go isolate selected and just make sure what numbers I actually get. It looks like they are more than they should be. You can see this is a luminance value of 15. Not cool. So I actually need my clamp to be after, or make sure these ones are clamped here, which they are not. So make sure a clamp is on, or a smooth step is actually on, and here too. So now if I check it out again, we have values of 1, 0, 1, and 1. Yeah, that's better now. Okay. So let's just hide this display settings, move this back over like that, disable isolate mode, hit save, and then go to my displacement shader and back to 1. So now you can see we get these correct chip offs everywhere. Weirdly enough, there is this offset, which I don't fully see why that is. Let's just double check what this is. So if I disable that, so this and this is correct. I'm just double checking if it lines up, but it is the same output. So it might be just an issue where it's not detailed enough. Let's see if I connect this back up. Well, something does change when I connect it, weirdly enough. So let me just do a clamp after, just to be sure that nothing is funky, and connect this up here. This one goes into displacement, and this one goes into the mix right here. So this should now be definitely correct. Still did change, I think. Anyways, I'm not exactly sure where this offset is coming from. It's only, well, it's in both actually. It might be that the displacement is not as accurate once it's being subdivided, because the UVs change maybe. But anyways, let's just continue. Maybe I should not do this. Update. Just updating the render view, didn't change. So what we can do now is we first should change my bump map. So we don't have any bumps. So this is actually the proper displacement only, no bumps. And what we can do is we can change the 0 value. What it means when it's on 0, a value of 0 will not displace. So a value of 1 will fully displace a value of 1. So if this is on 0.5, what it means, a input value of 0.5 will not displace, but a value of 0 will go down, like inwards, and a value above 0.5 will go outwards. So if you want to have little cuts or dents of it, you should have it on 0.5. Otherwise, you would be working with negative values, which I don't like actually. ZBrush works like that, Mudbox does not. So I like to work in a 0.5 scalar radius. What that means is I can go on, if I output values of 0.5, they will go outside. And if I go below 0.5, they will go inwards. All right. Definitely too much paint. We just want a really subtle effect, so 0.1 maybe. And you can see now this is kind of what we would expect, 0.2. And the more detailed you go on your subdivisions, or the higher you go, the more detailed your edge will be. You can see now it slowly catches up with my detail. If I go maybe 5, depending on how long it takes to subdivide, you should be in a good state. So I think a value of 5 is pretty good to work with. You can see now we get almost good matching chip offs. And the thing now is, because it's 2D displacement, you don't get any detail on the extrusion. So this is an effect you should play around carefully and not go overboard with this. And another cool thing which you can actually do is to add a broader noise for the displacement. So which means that the paint is actually chipping off. It has thicker parts and lower parts. So for this test, let's just go back down to 3 to just have faster iterations. And if I visualize my clamp, you can see this is what I get. And if I do a noise, one more noise, let's just move all these things over. Okay, and now what I want to do is I just want to multiply them together. AI multiply. And I want these both to be white. So 1 times 1 is 1, so there's no change. Okay, so if I visualize this, this is now my scale. So I definitely want to go lower, maybe 0.2. So if I visualize the result, if I'm not fully mistaken, we should multiply this now and we should get a different, let's just make this large. We should have kind of different values, which we currently don't have. So if I make this even darker, this should totally be a different value now. It should go, I'm not sure why is this not displaying it correct. It might be the case that, but I think I see the transition. But anyways, let's just see it in the displacement itself. So moving this down, this is displacing. If I do this, and if I go back to basic mode, it's maybe not that visible. Let's just update. I would expect this to go down actually. Let's see what's happening. Let's just do this guy goes in ID and I just visualize this. Definitely some patterns. Why is this not updating? Red goes in here. It's very interesting. Also, I don't see the update in my pixel, in my color picker. There it is, but it's not on the isolate. No, there it is now. Okay. So this should go 0.6 and this should go down 0.4. So there should definitely be something. Maybe it's just not that visible as I thought it is. All right. Anyways, not spend much more time on this. So let's just go up and increase my iterations back to 5 and see if we get some dents or some more distinctive dents. There is definitely something going on here. So this might just work. And you can see now this is also nice. You get these connected paint chips even here, intersections. Okay, so this is kind of what we have right now. And for the next steps, what I like to do is just work on the cell or the cement. And for this, I will just be unplugging displacement. And I will also be changing my subdivisions to maybe just 1 just to get a faster feedback. Okay, so the cool thing is with the concrete, it's kind of a cell shader. So Arnold ships now with a new cell noise, and this one actually has some nice stuff to it. So if I connect this to, let's say, input 3, which is at the bottom for now. So if I enable this, you can see you get the pattern, isolate selected for concrete and lock it. If I change the mode now to be cell 1, you can see we get these nice patterns. We want a full density, and now what we can do, we can add more layers, let's say 4, and you can see now we get this nice little breakup. You can change also the additive mode, so you can get really small in detail depending what you want to do. And then the next thing is to create a ramp, texture ramp, which connects into the palette of that cell noise. And what that means, it's actually picking a color from this input. So let's say I want to pick a color from here, and we pick this color. And then the other color, let's say we pick a red. And now you can see it's kind of eyeballing. It's picking random colors between this range. Oops, this should actually be on the right. And this one should be the pick color, like that. And obviously we should pick another color, but I like, because there are some bigger stones in here, I'll just pick that brown color, or yellow it is. And you can see it's not the same, 100% the same as below, but it's kind of estimating a little breakup. And you can change the ramp to just isolate the brown stones, and then in here you can go crazy with maybe not that crazy, maybe more desaturated yellow. Yeah, so let's say we want to work with this, and the next thing is you can go to your concrete and you can do a enable layer 2, and if you make this white and I do multiply, we should see the other one coming through. And you can do the same with max, or you can just do some whatever weird stuff you want to do. If I do a duplication of that cell noise and I plug this into my color 2, and for now I don't do a multiply, so just a typical over, then we only get this effect. So now you can do, for instance, additive, and you can play around with the scale. Where is the scale? Here. If you can do 2, you get smaller particles. And let's just see if I do multiply, and we'll just see what we get. If I find it. So did that work? Interestingly, not really. That's always a little bit of a guess why this is not working. So if this is over, it's fully on top, but I cannot do the multiply. Let's just dig into this. All right, it's actually the other way around. So layer 1 is at the bottom, layer 3 goes on top. So I would obviously need to multiply the top with the bottom, or I would just, instead of having layer 2, I create layer 4 and plug this into layer 4 instead. and then I do a multiply here, which means this cell noise there is multiplied with this one, and then I can just play around with the intensity. And obviously if I want to make the bottom one brighter, I would do a lighter colors in my ramp, something more like that, and then more like that to get more wider or brighter colors. And then I can play around with the noise to get something like that. And if I think this is too large, which it definitely is, I should just play around with the scale 2, maybe a value of 2 here, or even smaller, like that. And we still have this little pattern, so we do 4, and now we have a nice little breakup. And depending on your resolution, this should be just fine. Okay, so this would be this mask. And now what I like to do is to break up or like add some, you can see the paint is coming through here. So what I have right now is a clean mask, which drives the mix here. So if I do isolate selected and I view from the mix, you can see this is super clean. But what I want to do is I want to create or change my mask, which is this, and I want to kind of multiply this with kind of something which is kind of like this, or let's say like that. So I will create a range, and I will create a AI multiply, and also an AI clamp. Clamping is just to ensure it's in the range of 0 and 1. So this comes in here, this comes in here, and this one is my out color, which I want to make sure I just plug in the red channel. So red goes in here, red goes in there, red goes in here. It's just to ensure it's in the same, like it's just a grayscale matte. So now I have this multiplied by that, I have this multiplied by that, and I want this to be really black and white. So, and I want to visualize it from here. So I'm locking the multiply, and now what I'm doing, I'm just playing around with my max value, maybe going down to 0.2. Now you can see we get this little breakup. So 1.5, you can see now we get these broken up things, and whatever is black, as you remember, shows through the below map, or the map below actually. 1.6, this is definitely too much. And if you want to change it differently to these colors, you would do the same effect as I did with those RGB mats. Now let's just visualize what the result is. If I go to my and plug this into the mix and look at the mix, why don't we see anything? Because it needs to be this. You can see now it's kind of looking through, and this is what we wanted to see. And now depending on your base layer, this is what you get. And if you feel your base is too dark, you can just create a color correct node or something like that, and just connect that up. So you would do color input, and then you would go into shader 1, and you can just bring up the exposure maybe by a stop, and this is what you get. And if you look through this now, this is now a lot brighter, getting slowly in this direction. I still think that the concrete noise is too large, but it should be working just fine. And the next step now is, if you check the you would now need to create a nice displacement map for the paint, I guess. Oh, sorry, the concrete. So what we have now, let's just check this. So we have this, and obviously we need something in the dark spot. So where does it all come together? So we have it here, which is the bottom, and we have this. And these are the 3 mats, and they are separated by this. So what we can do now, we can just plus this on top or something, just to get some nice details. So let's just do an AI composite and connect up Let's see, we want this. It's getting a bit confusing, but it's not confusing, but it's a bit tied in here. Move this guy over, more space. And we want to connect this. So we want to connect that, and we want this guy. And let's just connect this to my ID slot so I can just use the isolate selection method and change maybe max. All right, so this is correct. What I just want to do now is play around with these values. So I just create a range, lots of ranges, but ranges are very powerful and you can use them quite a lot. And I just want to reduce the output. So I'm locking the composite 3 and I'm just reducing my output max. So now you can see we get this kind of effect, and we can actually plug this into the displacement and just see what we get. If I save this now, we actually want the multiply being applied after. So this would go in here. And let's see what we get now. If I connect the multiply to my ID slot, we should get this breaking up the displacement as well. So let's just save and connect up the displacement. All right, so nothing much changed just because we don't have any subdivisions. You can see something is going on though. All right, so let's just play up the subdivisions in my subdivisions tab on the shape. Maybe go back up to 4 and see what the basic shader gives us. And you can see now we get some very interesting effects. We can actually go a bit further, maybe also going up to 5. And we can also play around with the displacement as well. With the auto bump mode. All right, so this is now, you can see it's now coming, chipping off very nicely. Let's just go in here and play around with my auto bump and see what this brings us. It takes a while, it needs to resubdivide, and then it applies the auto bump. Weirdly enough, it kind of removes the nice details, and I had that before as well, and I can't really explain why that is. And you can see now my result does not look that appealing. So I'll just disable the auto bump and just actually subdivide it. Okay, so now you can see we get these dents back, and currently we have a very high roughness. So let's play this down to maybe 0.2. And now you can see we get some little shiny surface here. And this might be definitely too shiny. So what you can do as well is use this displacement map as a bump to denote like that. Connect this up, connect this to my normal camera. And then you can play around with the intensity as well, just to soften it up a bit. You can see now we are breaking up the surface here. And obviously we need to adjust the colors too at some point. So I think the roughness is still too low, 0.4, maybe 0.5. And this is now getting into the correct space. And then I would like to increase my scale to maybe 3.5, which should give us a stronger displacement effect. Like so. And then you can see it actually breaks up pretty nicely here. We get these bigger holes, and all we got to do now is adjust the color of our initial input color, which is here. So be sure to not move these sliders, but just change the color. Click here and then maybe add some more saturation to kind of get this more glowy yellow. Maybe fully yellow like that. I think the blacks are a bit too washed, so let's just click here, make this darker, maybe a value of 1, maybe even lower. Yeah, this should work. And then let's check out the red, which is here a lot more saturated. So let's just head over to my red color here and make this a lot more saturated and even brighter. Okay. So this is currently what we have. I think my base is, this is still too large, so we can easily just change it up, make this smaller in frequency. If you go to my original cell noise, make this maybe 5, and this one maybe 5.5 for the smaller multiplication scale. And if we want to have larger patterns, I think we want that. So I'll just head over to my original. I think this one was the top one, and then the bottom one goes here. So that's my bottom noise, middle noise, and this is my original one. So what I'm doing here, I'm multiplying different noises, but let's just play around with the red actually and make this a bit larger. So 0.05, maybe 0.1 and 0.025, and here's another 0. And also change my render resolution to 100, and my subdivision, I think it was set correctly. So let's just see what we get now if I render the full thing. Right, so the render is done. So let's just see what we actually got back. And it's, I would say it's a bit too large, like the pattern, and we would definitely add more, like a stronger bump or displacement for the concrete itself. But all in all, I definitely like the effect, and I also like the little noise we added, which actually brings us this effect here. You can see that there's like these bigger patches, thicker paint, less thick paint. And depending on your lighting, you will get really nice shadowing effects. And this kind of just, with this tutorial, I just wanted to show you a very creative way of multiplying different noises together to create a very distinct look. And obviously this applies to a lot of things and is not just to this little pillar. You can assign these techniques to lots of different things, breakups, and all this kind of effects. So again, I hope you liked this kind of tutorial, and I hope also you liked my scene scale in general. As I said, if you want to follow along, everything is uploaded to my Patreon channel, which you can sign up for and have access to the source files of this session and all the previous tutorials I made since, I think, MtoA 504 or something like that. So there's quite a few of data on there. And obviously, if you are not familiar with Arnold in general, please be sure to check out the Learn Arnold Fundamental course, which you will find on Udemy. If you just type in Arnold, it should show up definitely in your search results, and obviously you will find it by my name or just by the Arnold logo. So thank you guys for tuning in and watching this tutorial till the end. I know it's a bit much, it's a bit long, but I just want to be very detailed, and I had feedback which was not that good about saying I'm not showing shortcuts, or I am not displaying my resolution is too low or too high, and everything is a bit slower this time because I tried to explain it very much in detail. So you'll find this video on Udemy as well as on YouTube. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you in the next lesson.